There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go f yourself.
But
go f yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel. Don't advertise.
So there we have it. Elon Musk has told people who want to boycott X or boycott advertising on X to go F themselves. He's clearly extremely frustrated with what he perceives to be attempts to curtail his free speech and to do so unfairly, and to, in his opinion, misconstrue some of his comments. Now, the background to all of this was allegations of anti-Semitism leveled against Elon Musk. This came about following an exchange on Twitter. It started with a tweet from an account known as the artist formerly known as Eric. It states, "Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of dialectical hatred against whites that they now claim to want people to stop using against them. I am deeply disinterested in giving the tiniest poop now about Western Jewish populations coming to the disturbing realization that those hordes of minorities that support flattening their country don't exactly like them too much. You want the truth said to your face. There it is." Elon Musk then responds, "You have said the actual truth." This is not exactly the most delicate exchange. I'd say it could have been phrased significantly better, and I don't really agree with the original tweet. I think the original tweet is, like I've said, indelicate to say the least. And Elon Musk now seems to regret seeming to support that tweet. Thereafter, he went to a trip to Israel and visited some of the locations that were attacked by Hamas, for example. Now, the original tweet could have done without the references to, quote, hordes of minorities, or, quote, Jewish populations. It seemed to homogenize groups of people together, which is never a good place to start. And I can absolutely understand why the original tweet and Elon Musk's response to it might have been interpreted as racist or anti-Semitic, given the references to Jewish communities pushing dialectical hatred, or to hordes of minorities. In any case, this whole exchange was regrettable, and the whole exchange was a bad look, and it did place companies and advertisers in a bind. I think the original tweet's sentiment would have been significantly better expressed without references to Jewish people necessarily, or to hordes of minorities. Rather, it should have referred to progressives who happen to support Israel, but who have advocated for specific policies that have now backfired. For example, specific policies that would have enabled people that actively hate Israel and/or are anti-Semitic. For example, it does appear that progressives generally seem to loathe Israel. Therefore, a progressive Jewish person might inadvertently have enabled policies that have now backfired. Therefore, the original tweet and Elon Musk's response should have been much more specific, rather than just grouping together people on the basis of race or ethnicity or religion. That appears to be what Elon Musk was referring to. However, again, it wasn't very clear from this exchange. Now, Elon Musk clearly seemed to regret his tweet, hence why he went on a trip to Israel and visited some of the locations that were attacked by Hamas. Elon Musk appears to be slightly annoyed that people didn't ask him what he was actually meaning by his one-line response. Rather, people rushed to assume that he thought the Jewish people hated white people, or they rushed to assume that Elon Musk thought the minorities hated Jewish people. They rushed to assume what his intention was. Now, I think Elon Musk should have been clearer about his intention, but when he clarified that intention, people should have also adjusted what they thought about his response. Or phrased differently, when things are made more specific and the intention is clarified, people should have responded in the appropriate manner, rather than just assuming he was being racist. So I can kind of understand where some of the companies were concerned about with Elon Musk's tweet, but I can also understand why Elon Musk was slightly annoyed about the response after he tried to clarify. I do, however, think that Elon Musk should have been more careful, and he should have been much clearer in his clarification thereafter, rather than leaving things open to interpretation. Because if someone else is telling the story for you, you're not going to like how it ends. Now, all of this said, Elon Musk has shown us a masterclass in how to deal with a bit of a cancel culture mob if it arises, especially if you're a corporation and especially if you are very, very wealthy. Now, I personally don't believe that Elon Musk had anti-Semitic intentions in his comments, but I can understand why people are interpreting it as such. Now, Elon Musk, by telling the advertisers to go F themselves, has effectively removed the power those advertisers might have over him. After all, the advertisers and the companies have power because they can withdraw money. But if Elon Musk neutralizes that power by saying he doesn't care, then they effectively can't tell him what to do or what to think. It furthermore sets a precedent, and it does this for a couple of reasons. The problem with the progressive mob is that if you give an inch, they take a mile. Nothing is pure enough for the Puritans. If you start caving into the mob, then eventually they will ask for ever more concessions. Eventually, there will be a point where one of several things ultimately happens. First, you might say something or have said something out of ignorance or misguided humor, or simply you phrase something wrongly that they ultimately find intolerable, and they try to come after you for it. Now, perhaps such statements are lurking in the years of social media posts, either for a corporation or for an individual. Something that was maybe slightly indelicately phrased, or something that might have been phrased okay at the time, but now upon reflection maybe isn't quite so great. You might have since changed your worldview or become more educated, but this won't stop the mob. It won't stop the mob if you have changed your mind. It won't stop the mob if you have become more educated over time. It won't stop the mob if you have evolved. They will just look at something at one point in time and try to come after you for it. And they could willfully misinterpret what you have said. As we saw recently with the attempt to cancel a young child for supposed blackface at a football match. But it turns out this blackface wasn't blackface at all. It turns out his face was painted in the colours of his football team, which happened to be black and red, but the photographs only showed the black side of his face. They also came after him for wearing a Native American headdress. However, the boy in question is in fact Native American, so the cancellation here was seemingly rather misplaced. But that didn't actually help the case. They came after him anyway, and this turned into a massive dumpster fire on Twitter, where the relevant media organization was torn apart. It was a clear disaster. But that doesn't seem to stop people from actually coming after you, and Elon Musk has rightly realized this. They'll come after you if they sense that they have power and that they have some leverage and they can extract some concession. Elon Musk is clearly sick of this. Elon Musk is clearly sick of people coming after him. Now, to be fair in this case, Elon Musk had made some rather regrettable comments. However, it does appear that Elon Musk regretted those comments. And notably, when he was telling the mob to go F itself, he was wearing a tie that evidenced that regret. He's wearing a tie that was support for Israel. And as a result, we can see that his mind and his worldview evolved over time. The second issue is that they will reach a point where the mob's demands are simply too extreme. They'll reach a point where they're asking you to do ever more weird things, reach a point where they're asking you to take ever more extreme positions. And eventually, you'll be painted into a corner. You're painted into a corner, forced to support a position you don't actually think is good, you don't think is going to be a good business case, you don't actually agree with. You'll just be expected to comply, and if you don't, you are persona non grata. By acquiescing to the mob, you have overpromised on compliance with the demands, but you'll ultimately end up under-delivering. And when you under-deliver, they will be disappointed and they will come after you. By contrast, if you were never part of the mob, if you never acquiesce to the demands, they won't have nearly as much power over you. To my mind, I sense this to some extent with some of the universities. The universities have, over time, become more and more progressive. And in Australia, this led to the universities being forced to go on board with the voice referendum, even though many of their own students, many of their own faculty didn't actually agree with it. We can see this, for example, by people like Megan Davis seemingly compelling universities to get on board, saying that silence was political, when in fact for a university, silence is not political, silence is letting people make up their own minds, which is what should have happened. The universities here were painted into a corner. The universities across the world have also been painted into a corner over the Israel-Hamas conflict. By courting progressively more progressive students and faculty, they're now stuck with students who actively seem to support Hamas. And supporting Hamas is very, very different from potentially supporting Palestinians or criticizing Israeli foreign policy. Furthermore, it appears that some student protests have actively gone after Jewish faculty members and Jewish students. And clearly that is unacceptable because that's anti-Semitic, and also it is stupid. For example, it is as stupid as blaming all Persians for the wrongs of the Iranian regime. It is as stupid as blaming all American expatriates for the perceived wrongs of any of the presidents that have gone before. It is obviously ridiculous to blame all Jewish people for any perceived wrongs of the Israeli state, and it veers into anti-Semitism. However, because they have been so cowed by the progressive mob, the universities appear to be unable to actually do anything about this. They appear to be unwilling to do anything about this. Elon Musk has taken a stand. By taking a stand, he's removed a lot of the power that the mob would have otherwise had over him. And in so doing, he's showing corporations and showing individuals how they might best respond to a mob like this, how they might best respond to progressive calls for them to get ever more extreme. And Elon Musk, therefore, is a bit of an exemplar of how to deal with this. But if you've got any thoughts about Elon Musk's comments, well, do let me know that in the comments below. And otherwise, thanks a lot for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, and hopefully I see you next time as well.